Welcome to episode 109 of the Girl About the Globe podcast. For this episode, I'm going to transport you to the country of New Zealand. If you've ever wanted to go to New Zealand, this episode is for you. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Girl About the Globe, a podcast for you as a solo female traveller, empowering women to travel solo with maximum adventure, minimum impact.
New Zealand is such a wonderful country to explore, especially if you're solo. The types of solos it would attract, I would say, are adventure, cultural, nature, and ocean. There is so much nature here, and if you are a Lord of the Rings fan, then you should definitely go to New Zealand. If you're wondering, is New Zealand a safe country for women travelling alone? The answer is definitely a yes. And it's a great destination for the first timer. I've actually given it 5 out of 5 stars for solo female travel. It's smaller than its neighbour Australia, it's cheaper, and it's really safe to travel around. And if you love the outdoors and adventure sports, then this is a really good country to come to. It's also popular on a working visa, and it's part of a round the world ticket, so you can combine Asia or the Americas, such as LA, on the way. People in New Zealand are really down to earth, and it's really easy to travel New Zealand solo. When I travelled, I could even hitchhike if I got stuck. But obviously, use your instinct if you are going to be travelling there alone. To meet others, if you're solo travelling here, head to Queenstown. Queenstown is the adventure capital of the country, and you're going to meet so many others backpacking in New Zealand here. There's a choice of lodges, hotels, hostels, campsites, and adventure tours that you can just hop on, hop off, or it's just as safe if you feel comfortable hiring a rental car or even a motorhome, and you can just drive around the 2 islands. New Zealand is a bit of a model for ecotourism as well, because there's so much nature, and there's a North and South Island to explore. The country has got amazing landscapes, volcanic craters, hot springs, Scottish towns, which may surprise you, and wilderness islands, and of course, if you go to Queenstown, there's plenty to do if you're an adrenaline junkie. Auckland is known as the city of the sails. It's surrounded by volcanic craters, and it has a really nice harbour where you can just watch the world sail by. You can grab a bite to eat at Auckland's Fish Market in Jellicoe Avenue. It's a street with its own rain gardens. And if you're travelling there during the summertime, and don't forget, if you're from the Northern Hemisphere, these seasons are opposite to us. So their summertime would be our winter. But if you do visit during their summertime, Auckland's waterfront does come alive with live music and outdoor movies. Things to do in Auckland include visiting the country's first marine reserve at Goat Island for some underwater life, or you can climb Mount Eden for panoramic views of the city. Another place to see the city from above is the giant Sky Tower, which is the focal point of the city. When I went a few years ago, I actually climbed to the top of it. I don't think you can do that now, but it is one of the tourist attractions that you have to visit if you're in the capital. It's 328 metres high, and it gives you the best views of Auckland. A ticket allows you access to the sky deck and the observation levels, so you can enjoy the 360-degree panoramic views. You can also dine with a view at a revolving restaurant in Auckland, or you can just stay on the ground level and go to one of the bars or the theatre instead. And if you're an adrenaline solo, then you can walk around the rim of the tallest building on a thrilling skywalk. There's a place that I really love, which is very close to Auckland, and it's called the Bay of Islands. It's just north of the city. They're a group of islands with turquoise coves, and they've got kind of more of a tropical feel. I honestly didn't feel as though I was in New Zealand when I was in these islands. It's one of the best places to visit if you're in the city, and it's like a little tropical paradise. If you're active enough, you can climb to the top of Waikato, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, island for a 360-degree view. Make sure that you also visit Kerikeri, which is a subtropical paradise that you won't want to leave. And you can also take dolphin cruises through the natural arc of the Hole in the Rock, which is very cool to see. New Zealand is also a mecca for people who love trekking. So if this is you, You can travel from Auckland to Tongariro National Park, which is the country's oldest park and a World Heritage Site. The Tongariro Alpine Crossing is one of the must-dos for hikers because you go past its alpine and volcanic landscape. It's a popular day trip and hike. It's nearly 20 kilometres, so allow yourself at least 8 hours and make sure that you arrange some transport for either the beginning or the end of the route. There are also companies there that offer 3-day hikes if you want to take your time doing it. New Zealanders also know their wine. They produce wine, and Waiheke Island, or otherwise known as Wine Island, is known for its countless vineyards, and it produces some of the great flavours. It's less than a 2-hour ferry ride away from the city. So if you like wine, definitely head there. That region is really good for wine lovers. And you can also join food and wine tours from Auckland if you want to see some of the island's best vineyards and food as well. Some of the oldest wineries are in Napier, which is a city with the most inner city Art Deco buildings in the world, apparently. Or you can visit Hastings for its orchards and landscape gardens. The South Island is also good for wine lovers. There's a vineyard trail along the Farewell Spit. And if you like a Sauvignon Blanc, you can enjoy a world-class one at Marlborough Sounds. Back to the north of the island. So if you head south of Auckland, this is such a cool experience to do. There's hardly anywhere else I've ever done this, and it's called the Watamo Glowworm Caves. It's a world cave system which is just illuminated by glowworms. If you've never seen glowworms before, it's so magical, honestly. And the Watamo Caves are millions of years old, and they're really, truly something special to see. So you can take a boat ride through them, or if you're feeling adventurous, and you can do what I did, which is try blackwater rafting through the Starry Wonderland instead. It's definitely one of the unusual things to do here. From there, you can go to Rotorua, which is a natural phenomenon, but do be prepared for the sulphur smell. It's okay for a little while, but after a few hours, then it does go a little bit too much. So things to do in Rotorua include seeing the geysers spraying out of the ground, the bubbling waters, or you can also treat yourself to a mud bath in the spa. If you are a Lord of the Rings fan, you may want to visit Middle-earth. I didn't get a chance to go here, and I do have to go back because I really like Lord of the Rings. Middle-earth is home of Bilbo Baggins, and you can visit it. You can see how the landscape was transformed into the Hobbiton movie set while hearing how the movie was made. And this is one of the country's most popular attractions, obviously. So it is obviously a bit touristy. You can have your photo taken in front of a hobbit hole, or you can have a drink at the Green Dragon Inn. There's also another really cool place in New Zealand. This is what I really like about New Zealand, is that there were quite a lot of firsts for me. But there's a place called Hot Water Beach, which is on the Coromandel Peninsula. And it's a place to dig your own spa pool, and you can enjoy the laid-back pace that the Coromandel brings. But you don't just have to head to the South Island and go to Queenstown if you're up for some adventure, even though the South Island really is more of a place for adrenaline junkies. The North Island also has things to offer. So you can go skydiving in Taupo, over the Lake Taupo, to see magnificent views, or you can just mountain bike around Hastings, or you can take a leisurely kayak ride along the peninsulas. Whatever activity you want to do in New Zealand, it is there for you to do. At the south of the North Island is Wellington, which actually is the country's capital. It's not Auckland, as you may think. So it lies at the foot of the North Island. Here you will find Cuba Street, which is the coolest street in New Zealand, with a chic bohemian feel to it, and it's got the finest bars. There's a really good museum at the waterfront called the Te Papa Tongariro Museum. It's a very cultural and historic museum. Inside you'll learn about the Maori culture and New Zealand's rich and fascinating history. Wellington is also the gateway to the South Island, so there are ferries there that you can take across the Cook Strait, which is the name of the water between the two islands. But if you do suffer from seasickness, which I do, just beware, as the last part of the journey can be a little bit rough, so you may want to get some travel sickness tablets, just in case. Heading to the South Island, the scenery in the South Island will honestly blow you away. It's a contrast of fjords, which you can find at Fiordland National Park, glaciers, waterfalls, and it's ideal for trekking. One of the things to do here is visit Abel Tasman National Park, where the sea meets the countryside. It may be the country's smallest park, but it does have golden beaches and a picturesque trek, and it's also the perfect place to kayak, or you can just hike along the coastal paths. You can even scuba dive there as well and stay overnight. If you've ever seen a picture of any waterfalls coming out of New Zealand, it's probably Milford Sound. Milford Sound is a magical area of looming cliffs and waterfalls. There's only one way to see the Milford Sound, and that's by boat. It's known for its numerous waterfalls. It's so loud there because you just hear all the water cascading. It's stunning, and it can be easily reached from Queenstown. There's also a really well-known rail journey there called the Transalpine Rail Journey, which is in the South Island. It runs from Greymouth, which is on the west coast, to Christchurch, which is a quaint English-style city with green rolling hills and botanical gardens. You can actually punt along the river, just as you would be able to in England, or you can sample fudge at the Fudge Cottage. If you're coming from the UK, you will feel just at home in Christchurch. It's also surrounded by alpine landscapes. One of the things to do here is take the gondola ride to get a 360-degree view of the city, the harbour and the mountains, or you can hike for the views and walk to the crater rim. From one English town to a Scottish one, it's very surprising, New Zealand. You can head to Dunedin, which is on the east coast. It's very rich in Scottish history, and it has the world's steepest street called Baldwin Street. You may think that that's in San Francisco because I can't remember the name of it, but they have a really, really steep, famous street with a tram coming down it. But Dunedin does have the world's steepest street. It's a very historical university town. You can see penguins here and albatrosses if you decide to go on a wildlife eco tour. If you prefer the larger mammals, Kaikoura, which is a seaside settlement, is a great place to do activities from the ocean. Here you can see the giant sperm whales and you can swim with seals, or if you don't have good sea legs, you can actually do a helicopter tour to see them instead. Something I really recommend doing is seeing one of the glaciers. I did a half-day hike here on one of the glaciers, and I've never done it before, and it was amazing. And there's a mountain called Mount Cook, which runs along the South Island. It's the highest mountain in the country. It's home to 8 of New Zealand's glaciers. Araki Mount Cook is the place to come if you want to climb a glacier and if you love nature as well. So there's a hike there called the Hooker Valley Track. It's a flat trail and it takes you over suspension bridges and its famous boardwalk. Or if you're really adventurous, you can combine a helicopter ride with a climb on one of the most famous glaciers, which is Franz Josef Glacier. There's also another one called Fox Glacier, which is the one that I hiked on, and they are great for ice climbing adventures. Or if you're not a fan of the cold, which I'm not really, then you can just take a half-day walk just to get a taster of the blue ice caves and breathtaking views. I did a half-day tour and it was enough for me just to get a sense of the glacier. As I mentioned before, if you really want to get your heart pumping, head to Queenstown. It's the adventure capital of New Zealand. It's got every adventure sport you could possibly think of here. There's a high-speed jet boat ride, skiing, and the original bungee jump. I think it has more than this, but they do have the original bungee jump there. I actually did a bungee jump in New Zealand because this was the first place the bungee jumps started. And I wouldn't do it again, but it was such a good place to do it. But you don't have to be an adrenaline junkie to find things to do in Queenstown. You can actually just have more of a relaxing time and just take in the views of the remarkable mountains, or have a relaxing gondola ride. But Queenstown is, in my opinion, one of the best places to go if you're solo, because it's very easy to meet others. You can also explore hiking trails together, such as Ben Lomond, Moke Lake Loop, or Queenstown Hill. If you're an art lover, then head to Nelson, where you can lose yourself in the Craftsman Studios. Nelson is the artist hub of the country, and you can watch glass blowers creating beautiful pieces and then purchase them to take home. You don't need to go all the way to Venice to be able to see glass blowers, just head to Nelson in New Zealand. Invercargill is the southernmost point of the country. There's not really that much to do here, but if you're in the south of the country, it's worth going anyway. You can visit Stewart Island for an even slower pace of life, which is amongst rainforests and sweeping sands. I'd say it's one of the places to go to if you've already seen the best of New Zealand and you have a little bit more time. So overall, New Zealand is practically made up of national parks. Everywhere you turn will offer something new. It's amazing for nature lovers, and it's no wonder that this country was chosen as an iconic setting for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. New Zealand is actually called 100% pure, and that's because it is. New Zealand is very easy to travel around independently, but if you are looking for a tour company, then for New Zealand tours, I recommend G Adventures, who I've personally travelled with. Not here, I travelled with them in South America. Intrepid Travel, and also Stray Travel, who I actually explored New Zealand with. I did a month pass with Stray Travel, and they offered a hop-on, hop-off bus tour. So you can basically hop off any of the destinations that they travel to from the North and the South Island, or you can just stay on. And it was very easy to meet people on this tour. I loved it, and there were so many different excursions you could do in terms of adventure. There's also a company called Kiwi Experience. If you've been to Australia, you might be familiar with the Oz Experience. I've actually done the Oz Experience. It's more geared up towards the young party traveller. They do have one in New Zealand, hence it's called Kiwi Experience. And there's also a company called Adventure South that offers cycling and walking tours. And then for any day tours, I would suggest using Get Your Guide. Get Your Guide is a platform that hosts local tour companies, and you can find anything and everything that you want to do in New Zealand there. For accommodation in New Zealand, really depends what you're looking for. You can rent a motorhome, which is really popular, and you can just drive around the country. Camping alone also is very safe and very easy to do. There's a lot of camping facilities on the islands. But then amongst the campsites, there's also a variety of accommodations. So you've got the hotels, luxury accommodations, motels, suites and apartments within the cities such as Queenstown and Wellington. There are lots of hostels if you're backpacking. There's also Airbnb as well. So travelling around, you can hire a car and just take to the road, then you've just got freedom. And the road infrastructure there is very good. You just need to be very careful of animals on the road when you're driving at night. There are also services that offer free one-way rentals, so you can relocate a car or camper van, so you can drive to another car or location for free. There is also public transport. There are trains that run through the central part of North Island and also to the Southern Alps. There's the Transalpine, which I mentioned before, which does the route from Greymouth to Christchurch, and that is actually said to be New Zealand's best train journey. There's also an intercity bus service that runs through the country, as well as local shuttles and bus services between the towns, but they don't operate everywhere, so if you're going a bit off the beaten track, you might need to look for alternative transport. And there are domestic flights. Air New Zealand and Jetstar both have domestic flights, but I do recommend going overland. How long do you need in New Zealand? I was there for a month. I would say you need 3 weeks, really. The South Island is the most scenic, so if you don't have the time to visit both of the islands, then just visit the South Island. If you do have the time, you could easily just spend 1 week exploring the North and then 2 weeks for the South. Best time to go, December to February are the best months to experience the summer. But then if you do visit from March to May, you'll be there for the autumn where the weather is still great and you can still wear summer clothes. And it's probably going to be cheaper as well because it's not the peak season. New Zealand isn't really the place to go for sunbathing anyway. So even if the weather's cooler, it's ideal because if you're just hiking and doing adventure, that's the perfect weather. There are a few different airports in New Zealand. You may fly into Auckland. There's also Wellington and also Christchurch. And if you are going to New Zealand, you may want to combine it with a flight to Fiji. I did actually do a few days flying to Fiji from Auckland and then back into Auckland when I was in New Zealand. I actually flew to New Zealand from Australia. So it's good to combine the two. Ways to be a conscious traveller in New Zealand. New Zealand is known for its Maori culture, but make sure that you respect the Maori culture and ask permission before taking any pictures of them or of their traditional ceremonies. You can buy traditional crafts from them to help sustain their livelihoods. If you do plan to go dolphin or whale watching, just check that your tour operator has a commercial marine mammal viewing permit. Apparently, the tour companies have that, which helps minimise the impact on their population. Don't touch or feed the dolphins if you are going on a tour. Obviously, if you're going camping, just make sure to dispose of what you don't need properly. And when you're trekking, keep to the marked trails and established tracks to prevent disturbing any wildlife habitats. There are several social enterprises in New Zealand that give back to the community that you might want to visit while you're here. You could dine at Everybody Eats. For every $10, they provide meals for people in need. There's another company called Eat My Lunch. For every lunch that you buy from Eat My Lunch, they also give away to a child in need. Or instead of dining to make an impact, you can volunteer for a day at Cure Kids or Auckland City Mission to help make a difference to an elderly person who is isolated or someone who is homeless. There's also a lot of eco properties in New Zealand that you might want to stay in as well. There's a really cool park called Woodland Park. It's located in the Watamu Caves area. It's so different as you can spend a night in a Hobbit motel, you can spend a night in a train from a steam train era, an old navy boat or a former warplane. All their motels are built from recycled and natural materials. It's definitely a unique way to spend an evening. There's also lodges, there's tree houses there as well. So overall, New Zealand is an amazing country to visit. If you've never been here before, I definitely recommend it, especially if you're flying to Australia and you have the time, because it is so much closer to Australia. I hope that this has inspired you to visit New Zealand and that you can hear the passion in my voice about how great the country is. If I have inspired you, you can find all you need to plan a trip to New Zealand and everything I've just mentioned on this podcast episode on the Solo Travel in New Zealand guide on the Girl About the Globe website. And I will be back next week with an interview with a lady who has just spent 4 months travelling solo in Iraq. I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to our Girl About the Globe podcast, making solo travel easier for you. Find everything that you need for your solo travels at girlabouttheglobe.com and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.